Hey, what is up, people? What's up? So yes, welcome to this video on the tournament of Zurich 1953. I decided to do a whole series on the book because many people consider the book to be one of the best books ever written in chess, and because of that, I figured that if I share the commentary that Bronstein gives, if I convey what I believe he's trying to say, and we share that all together in a community, I feel that we're all creating a good learning environment for everyone, and it could be a good compilation of video and content for the channel and for the audience as well. So having said that, this game, the first game, is a game between Laszlo Szabo and Efim Geller, and Bronstein starts off by talking or mentioning that he had long suspected that when the authors that he read began discussing dark square weaknesses, that was something beyond their understanding, and so he would reason that he would understand that let's see, that a weakness or an attack on the dark squares, that okay, blah, 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 that the subject under discussion is beyond their understanding or beyond the author's understanding. He says that he would say to himself, it must be true that the enemy dark squares would be weak if his pawns stand on light squares and he loses his dark square bishop. But if he then removes all of his pieces from the dark squares, what would be left for me to attack? And so he says that such was his line of reasoning until the day that he realized that a weakness of the dark squares is also a weakness of the pieces and pawns on the light squares. That's incredibly deep. What he's trying to say is that, okay, yeah, basically at a weakness in the dark squares is a weakness of the pieces and pawns in the light squares, which is hardcore because you can see how he came to that conclusion. And so anyway, he also says that light square weaknesses are also possible, resulting in a weakening of the enemy pieces and pawns on the dark squares, as occurred in the game between Geller and Najdorf from round 13. And okay, so this game is incredibly instructive. What Bronstein basically shares with us there is just like a gem of chess understanding, because you know, we always hear about light or dark square weaknesses, but nobody really puts that into words into that type of perspective. So okay, Szabo was white. Geller was obviously back. The game started off with c4, knight f6, g3, e6, bishop g2, d5, d4, pawn takes c4, queen to a4 check, knight bd7, knight f3, a6, queen takes c4, b5, queen c6. And here Bronstein says that having hatched a plan to weaken the enemy dark squares, Szabo undertakes a delicate maneuver aimed at bringing about the exchange of the dark square bishops, which will further strengthen his grip in the dark squares. So rook to b8, bishop to f4, knight d5, bishop g5, bishop e7, takes, castles, bishop b7, queen c2, c5, rook c1, and so Bronstein here tells us that this is a small but serious inaccuracy because black removes a piece from the main theater of operations, and additionally the combination with knight takes b5 and b4 is now possible, and due to the insufficiently protected rook on c8, you know, this is obviously a big tactical theme that is looming now. And he also states that Szabo continues with his plan of fixing his pawns on a6 and b5 on the light squares, and that a more prudent move would have been knight to b6 as opposed to knight to f6. So if there's anything that I could say about these positions, I've played the Catalan, but I've never played the Catalan like, you know, a top grandmaster. But from what I've learned is that these pawn advances, they when they advance, even though they're aggressively placed, there are also weaknesses because they're closer to our pieces. And so this is why you always see a lot of penetrating maneuvers by white where they target the c6 square or the c5 square, and you're going to see that happen in this game. So the game continued, knight to a4. Excuse me. b4, knight to a4, queen b3, takes, queen takes, castles, rook to c1, rook d8, Bronstein says that Geller cannot take the c file away from his opponent with rook to c8 because of obviously queen takes c8 followed by knight to e5, and there is no way of stopping bishop to c6. So a3, knight d5, queen d4. Bronstein says that seeing that white's positional squeeze could become very dangerous should he succeed in occupying the 7th rank or in establishing his knight on c5. Geller decides to complicate with this move and also stops both threats. So now queen to d4, f6, knight e1, a beautiful move, e5, and now the most instructive position in the whole game. Szabo plays queen to c5, but here Bronstein recommends queen to a7. And he says that this would have been consistent with all of white's play, and he emphasizes that this is the point where black takes advantage of the dark square weaknesses, but attacks the pieces that are in the white. And he gives some lines of analysis. For instance, if rook d7, then simply queen takes and bishop takes d5 is winning, or if e4, then just bishop h3, and that is more than enough. So queen c5, queen takes c5, and pawn takes c5. And now Bronstein tells us that unfortunately for Szabo, he's overlooked that he's gone through a typical psychological error that most chess players go through, that when they're superior for a certain period of time in the game, they become overconfident, or they overestimate their position. And he says that white would have maintained a clear advantage by capturing with the rook, but he thinks that Szabo believed that by capturing with the pawn, with the threat of having a passed pawn and there being a pinned knight on d5, that he would have maintained the advantage. But unfortunately that's not so, and that Geller now has a blockading plan of defense with bishop to c6 followed by rook to d7 and rook e7, that this should lead to a draw. But unfortunately Szabo decided to keep on pushing the game, and he eventually ends up losing. So the rest of the game is rather uninstructive. I mean, we just see how Geller blockades the position, and then Szabo pushes through. He avoids perpetual and eventually loses because it's black the one that has the possibility of infinitely improving his position. Let's see what that looks like rather quickly. As you see, the black rook, Geller's rook, is moving to e7 and to d7, and this is the blockading defense that Geller had found. And with king to f1, Szabo declines perpetual, and as a result he ends up losing the game, because now he loses his c-pawn, and he's materially inferior, and he should lose the game now because he has given all the advantage to black. As you can see, all of black's pieces are slowly pushing white's, and in a matter of 8 moves or so, the game will be over. And after b3, Szabo resigned.